Hello, Jacksonites. Why do I keep changing my goddamn backgrounds? Um, well, I figured out the reason why my videos are so glitchy. Pardon the Return of the Living Dead review with the audio being buzzy. I had the same problem with my Doom 2005 review as well. Um, although Return of the Living Dead's much more tolerable. So, um, I'm too far away from my modem, so that's why the reception was so weak. So I'm just going to stay out here. I'm not sitting in my chair because Meadow stole it from me. She wanted to have her own area to sit out here, so I decided to give her the chair. And the couch has kind of become more my domain, so oh well, it works. Although I wonder, how would this look? Hmm. Sure, I'll leave it like that. Okay, so welcome to Zombiesploitation episode 4. Actually, no, I'm going to leave that off. Yeah, now you can see me better. Yeah, welcome to Zombiesploitation episode 4. I'm going to do one more episode of Zombiesploitation after this, and then move on to my next series. I figure 5 episodes will be a good start for a new series before I go on to something else. So, today we will be tackling another one of my favorite zombie films, one that I didn't expect to see when I saw it, but regardless, since day one of seeing this movie, it's always been a favorite. Today I will be talking about my first Robert Rodriguez film on this channel, 2007's Planet Terror. Oh, goody gumdrops. I fucking love this movie. So, Planet Terror, I have a very distinctive history with because I very first time heard of this film through James Rolfe. He did a review. Okay, so Planet Terror is a 2007 American film written and directed by Robert Rodriguez. The film was originally theatrically released as part of Grindhouse, a double feature that combined this movie with Quentin Tarantino's film Death Proof. After Grindhouse underperformed at the box office, excuse me. Planet Terror was released as a standalone feature in other countries and on home media. It received positive reviews, with most critics considering it the superior of Grindhouse's 2 films. I definitely agree. I'm not a huge Quentin Tarantino fan, but I have seen Death Proof. Did not like that film at all. Sorry. So, yeah, Planet Terror. I first heard of this through James Rolfe. He reviewed both Planet Terror and Grindhouse on his channel, reviewing the Grindhouse double feature. And he gave both very positive reviews. And the Planet Terror, of course, because it's a zombie movie, really, really interested me. Because, like I've said many times, at this time, I was still at the peak of my zombie obsession. So anytime I hear the words, it's a zombie flick, I'm like, oh, what? Sorry? Huh? What? Zombie movie? So, but I didn't see this movie until about 6 years later. Me and my mom and stepdad had just moved into, because I first heard about Planet Terror at the first duplex that my mom and stepdad lived at. And then when we moved to the current one that that they live at now, Eric, my stepdad, got his hands on Planet Terror because he remembered me hearing that I was interested in seeing this movie. I think I was about 15 or 16 or so at the time. So, against my mom's wishes, because as I've stated, I just now realized too, this is like the 3rd or 4th review in recent memory where I've worn this Spider-Man shirt. Not intentional, I promise. So, moment of self-reflection. Not intentional, I promise. I just really like this shirt. So, against my mom's wishes, as I've stated multiple times, my mom is not a big fan of horror films, but I watched this movie anyway. I was thoroughly entertained. Planet Terror rocked the fuck out of my world. I was very impressed. I was very entertained. I was very, very happy. Um, this movie kicks ass. And I have not seen that many movies of Robert Rodriguez's filmography. I've seen Desperado. I've seen Once Upon a Time in Mexico. I've seen Spy Kids 2 and 3. Never seen the first one. I've seen Alita Battle Angel. And I've seen Planet Terror. Okay, yeah, I'm just going to say Planet Terror is probably my favorite Robert Rodriguez film. I haven't seen that many. And I will say that every movie that I have seen of Robert's I've liked. But this is the one that I definitely say is my favorite. I think Alita Battle Angel might be his best film, only just because that movie probably has the highest budget of any movie that he's ever worked with. And Robert Rodriguez is one of those directors that can do great things with limited resources. But if he can just take that creative energy and passion and funnel it into a $150 million budget, he'll deliver one hell of a movie. So, not to say that any of his other movies are bad, but as far as favorites go, Planet Terror is the best of the best as far as I'm concerned. So, Planet Terror was released April 6th, 2007. It had a $23 million budget, but it only made $11.4 million in its box office run. Hmm. Anyway, so yeah, this movie didn't do well in its box office run, but since then, it's gotten one hell of a cult following on home video and such. And I've never really seen anybody talk shit about Planet Terror. This seems to be a pretty well-liked film in Robert's filmography. Rightfully so. So with all that being said, let us get into the plot of Planet Terror, shall we? In rural Texas, go-go dancer Cherry Darling runs into her mysterious ex-boyfriend El Rey at the Bone Shack, a restaurant owned by brothers JT and Sheriff Haig. Meanwhile, the demented Lieutenant Muldoon and his men make a transaction with chemical engineer Abby for mass quantities of DC-2, a deadly biochemical agent. When Muldoon learns that Abby has an extra supply, he attempts to take Abby hostage, causing him to release the gas into the air, mutating most of the town's residents into deformed zombies. The infected townspeople are treated by Dr. William Block and his unhappy, unfaithful, and bisexual anesthesiologist wife, Dakota, at a local hospital. Random attacks begin along the highway, causing El Rey and Cherry to crash. In the aftermath, several zombies tear off Cherry's right leg, and at the hospital is Tammy, the former lover of Dakota, who Block recognizes. Upon realizing Dakota was about to leave him for Tammy, he stabs Dakota's hands with her anesthetic syringe needles repeatedly, rendering them numb and limp, useless, before locking her in a closet. El Rey is detained by Sheriff Haig based on past encounters between the two. As the patients mutate, El Rey leaves the station and arrives at the hospital, attaching a wooden table leg to Cherry's stump. As El Rey and Cherry fight their way out of the hospital, Dakota manages to escape in her car. Meanwhile, Block becomes infected along with others, while Cherry and El Rey take refuge at the Bone Shack. Dakota retrieves her son Tony and takes him to her estranged father, Texas Ranger Earl McGraw, following a missing reel segment. Dakota, Earl, Cherry's former boss Skip, and Tony's crazed babysitter twins arrive at the Bone Shack. With Haig badly injured, the group decides to flee to the Mexican border before being stopped by a large mass of zombies. Muldoon's men arrive, killing the zombies before arresting the group. Abby tells them that these soldiers are stealing the gas supply because they are infected, and constant inhalation of the gas delays mutation. They also learn that some of the population is immune, hinting at the possibility of a cure. As Cherry and Dakota are taken away by two soldiers, the others defeat the guards. JT sustains a gunshot in his stomach in the process, while the group searches for Muldoon. When he is found by El Rey and Abby, Muldoon explains that he killed Osama bin Laden. Damn, this didn't age well. Before he and his men were infected and were ordered to protect the area before being killed by Abby and El Rey. Meanwhile, Cherry is held at gunpoint and is forced to dance by a soldier who threatens to rape her. Eventually, she breaks her wooden leg across his face and stabs him in the eye, which technically probably should have killed him, but it doesn't. Dakota, after realizing her hands have regained feeling, uses her syringe gun, yep, she's got one of those, to subdue another soldier. El Rey and Abby arrive to rescue Cherry and Dakota. El Rey replaces Cherry's broken wooden leg with an assault rifle prosthetic. JT decides to stay behind to detonate explosives to eliminate the remaining zombies while the others flee. The survivors make plans to escape by stealing helicopters after fighting through a large group of zombie soldiers. However, Abby is killed in the process. While saving Cherry from a zombie, El Rey is fatally wounded. Cherry, now sporting a minigun leg, leads survivors to the Caribbean beach at Tulum, where they start a peaceful new society during a worldwide zombie outbreak. It is also revealed that Cherry has given birth to her and El Rey's daughter, ending the movie just like that. Well, how about this plot? It is a fairly typical zombie outbreak story, but what makes it so special, this is actually, I'm just going to say this right now. So this is my first pro of the movie. It's batshit crazy. Not exactly like Doom levels of batshit crazy, but actually, no, kind of similar. Similar in the fact that this movie is so unpredictable. There's so much crazy shit that's thrown on screen, and there's so much chaos that happens all throughout the film. The movie almost kind of never really gives you a break to just sit back and take it all in. But because all of it is so entertaining, all of it is so balls out nuts, and all of it is just so wild and unpredictable, you can't help but just sit back and enjoy the ride. It's very tense, it's very chaotic, it's very insane, but it's also just entertaining as hell. There's a couple problems that I have with the story, mostly in the film's ending, but other than that, this is one solid ass zombie movie. So yeah, with all that being said, not much to say about my first pro. The film is just so batshit crazy. So other than that, let's get into the rest of my pros. To once again take a page out of Trevor Boy's book, pro number 2 is that this movie has an extremely genre-friendly cast. I on purposely did not list off all the cast members. Cherry Darling is played by Rose McGowan, the former fiancée of Marilyn Manson and the Kickstarter to the entire Me Too campaign. for better or for worse. This is back when she wasn't a little crazy. We have Freddie Rodriguez as El Rey. To my knowledge, no relation to Robert Rodriguez. Josh Brolin as Dr. Block, Thanos, and Bran from the Goonies. We have Marley Shelton as Dakota Block, Wow, she was Wendy Peppercorn in The Sandlot? What the fuck? I think she's also most well known for what the hell? Sex in the City. Ugh. We have Robert Rodriguez regular Jeff Fahey as J.T. Haig, the guy who owns the Bone Shack. We have Michael Biehn as Sheriff Haig, Kyle Reese. We have Bruce Willis as Lieutenant Muldoon. And Quentin Tarantino as Lewis, rapist number one. Another Robert Rodriguez regular. Robert Rodriguez and Quentin Tarantino, they share a lot of crossing over elements. Like a lot of them, they use the same special effects guys. They're both very violent filmmakers. Like their movies tend to be pretty violent, and they have a similar batshit crazy, loving homage feel. And we also have Tom Savini as Deputy Tolo. And finally, too, another Robert Rodriguez regular and Quentin Tarantino regular. We have Michael Parks as Earl McGraw, Quick Draw McGraw. So this movie has a very, very good genre-friendly cast. None of the characters are really worth mentioning. This is very much an ensemble cast. We have a lot of really good character actors just coming in and doing their thing, and they all do a really, really good job. All the acting is pretty good. All the performances are pretty solid. Everybody has their little time to shine. Like Cherry Darling, her shtick is that she's a go-go dancer, and she has these things that are like useless talents, and she has a whole list of them. Like useless talent number 32 is learning how to ride a bike, like a motorcycle. Useless talent number 12 is a go-go dance. Useless talent number 66 is being able to like bend yourself in half on your hands and feet. That's all I can remember off the top of my head. But they turn out to not be so useless because a lot of them kind of end up saving her life. The fact that she knows how to go-go dance saves her life. She knows how to ride a motorcycle, even with a prosthetic leg. And she, that bending over backwards thing saves her life because she uses that to dodge an RPG. So good on her. El Rey is certainly a very likable protagonist. He's a badass dude. I think my brother theorizes that because I showed him this for the first time when I turned 19, and he absolutely loved the fuck out of this movie. And El Rey has a tattoo of a black bird on his wrist. So my brother thinks that he's a Black Sparrow, which I guess is a military term. He's very good with butterfly knives, which is what he uses to save Cherry Darling. More on that in a minute. And he's very good with guns, not just because this is Texas, but his favorite being giant revolvers, which he uses all the time in this movie. Again, not just because it's Texas and they like their big guns. I concur. But yeah, he's a badass guy. He's got some good dialogue. He knows how to kick ass and he knows how to use guns. He's great. Then we have Michael Biehn, of course, as Sheriff Haig. He's kind of a hard ass throughout a good chunk of this movie. He's a badass cop too. He knows how to use guns, and he knows how to be a badass too. He knows how to like command everyone's attention and command everyone's respect. And then he realizes later in the movie, because he tries to keep El Rey from using guns just because he was carrying a gun when he wasn't supposed to be earlier in the film. But then when he realizes that he was in the military, he's like, you know what? Take this. Do what you do best. Which he does. It's a shame he dies, but he does go out fighting, and he knows how to run zombies over in gooey, splattery fashion. More on that later. But overall, yeah, the rest of the cast is pretty solid. Like I said, everyone gives a good performance, and if you know your genre people, similar to Return of the Living Dead, there will be people that you'll be noticing all throughout the movie, like, ooh, hey, look, ooh, it's Tom Savini playing a cop. Bruce Willis is playing a villain for once. Kyle Reese is being a sheriff. It's cool. Robert Rodriguez is one of those directors that knows how to pick good talent. Kind of like, also like Quentin Tarantino, and also like Rob Zombie. Pro number 3 is this movie has a kick-ass fucking soundtrack. The music in this movie was also done by Robert Rodriguez. Robert Rodriguez directed, wrote, produced, did the cinematography, he did the music, and he also did editing along with Ethan Maniquis, or Maniqui, whatever his name is. So this is very much a Robert Rodriguez film. He tends to do that a lot. Just do everything, writing, directing, producing, editing for his films. And man, is this movie's music absolutely spectacular. I don't really know how to describe it, but it's kind of like Rob Zombie on super steroids and super crack. It's very loud. It's very bombastic and explosive. It gets your blood pumping. It's very high octane. But there's also moments that are kind of romantic, and there's moments that are... It's a very varied score. There's moments when it's really action-packed. There's moments when it's badass. Some moments when it's creepy. Some moments when it's romantic. And others, it's just overall really damn good music. Good on Robert Rodriguez. I guess he might be the next John Carpenter when it comes to doing his own music. And before we proceed, of course, a word from our sponsor. Alrighty. Pro number 4. Man, does this movie have a sick sense of humor. There's a lot of... I guess technically the term is dark humor, but I think it's more just like... There's some really funny moments in this movie that are... It's like the pinnacle of gross out humor, but it's just oddly really funny. Like JT's shtick, for example, he's a restaurant owner, and he's always trying to figure out his perfect barbecue sauce. Because, Texas, they love their barbecue down there. Why the fuck did my dad never eat any barbecue when he went to Texas? The fuck? This whole movie... JT is always talking about, I got to figure out my perfect sauce. Like, what are the ingredients that I need to use to make the perfect barbecue sauce? One of his funniest moments, after he kills 2 zombies, there's barbecue sauce splashed all over the place, and he's tasting, and he's like, I think I nailed it. Holy shit, I think I finally cracked it. I finally found my award-winning barbecue sauce. And then his brother, the sheriff, walks up to him and just goes, Your blood's in it. God damn it, he's right. Cherry Darling also has some moments when she's funny because she quits being a go-go dancer and then she says, I want to be a stand-up comedian. And she does have a couple really funny lines into this too. Two that come to mind. One is when she's talking to JT. She's just sitting by herself, taking a moment. JT comes in and says, hey, you want some barbecue? Best in Texas. Oh, no thanks. What's the matter? You don't eat meat? Oh, I eat meat. I'll eat lots of shit. See this? What's that? Shit-eating grin? Which also makes JT laugh too. And he's just like, you ought to be a comedian. And then they share... When Ray dies at the end of the movie, her and Cherry share one last joke together. She's like, because this had been established earlier in the movie, but when Ray was giving her a lift in his truck, they mistook two zombies killing somebody for just people picking up roadkill. And Ray mentioned how that the eating of venison has risen 30% in the last few years. And 60% of all of that is from roadkill. So people eat roadkill. I mean, I would too. If the meat's fresh, I just take it home. Free food. I love me some venison. So at the end of the movie, Cherry's trying to get him to get up and not die. So she's like, and because there's zombies running around, she makes a joke. You have to get up. Motherfuckers around here eat roadkill. It's just kind of darkly and sickly funny. This movie has that's part of what's batshit crazy about this movie is that there's so much crazy shit that goes on. And there is like this underlying sick sense of humor going about. I think it's really well done. Only a director like Robert Rodriguez can take something as fucked up as someone's dick that's melting away because he's turning into a zombie. He's the only one that can make that funny. Oh, and of course, there's an obvious one too. When Cherry stabs Quentin Tarantino in the eye with her broken leg, he's just like, you give me some wood, now I'm gonna give you some fucking wood. And then they look down and his dick is falling off, melting. Yeah, this movie, it's not like out and out funny per se, but there's some moments where you'll get a really good snicker out of the sick humor that's going on here. Yeah, I already talked about that. So pro number 5 is that there's some decent scares in this movie. There's not really any suspense, and this movie isn't really trying necessarily to be a horror film. And coming only very recently off of my zombie obsessed high, I've always still been obsessed with zombie movies. But at this point in time was when I was sort of getting over my fear of zombies. And this movie didn't necessarily like traumatize or scare me or anything. There were a couple scenes that did kind of freak me out. And there's one actually that does sort of still get under my skin. But this is mostly like there's only a couple scenes where there's a little bit of suspense. You can tell what's happening. Like you just see zombies skulking about and you're just kind of wondering, well, when are they going to strike? When are they going to attack? And it's punctuated by some really decent jump scares. Like there's one scene when the zombies first attack, the sheriff's office, Tom Savini's finger gets bitten off by a zombie. So Sheriff Haig sends him out sends one other deputy out to go inspect what's going on. He finds Tom Savini's wedding ring. He picks it up and he's walking over to give it to Tom Savini. Then all of a sudden, a zombie comes out of nowhere and bites his arm whole ass off. It's not like super scary or anything, but it's like, oh shit, more just like that. It's a good jump scare. It's not cheap. It's not stupid. It's not well, I mean, maybe it's a little telegraphed, but what punctuates it even more is how gnarly and fucked up the dude's arm is, and also what happens to him right after he gets his arm bit off. So, yeah, they're again, nothing super scary, nothing super traumatizing. There's just some minorly suspenseful moments punctuated by decent jump scares. It's good. Pro number 6, I have 10 pros, by the way, is the good new old look. So one of this movie's, the reason why this movie was called Grindhouse when it was paired off with Planet Terror, this was Robert Rodriguez and Quentin Tarantino paying respects to the exploitation era. An exploitation movie, I hope there's a definition. A film intended to attract an audience by means of its sensationalist or controversial content. Exploitation movies were, they were pretty much like video nasties throughout the 1970s. This tends to happen, and this did happen. Like one of the a slightly more modern example of a movie that was considered a video nasty, the original Evil Dead movie. That movie was seen as like one of the most violent and offensive movies ever made at the time. And it was given an X rating, and then it was released unrated. And because it was so violent and fucked up, people wanted to just get rid of it, squash it down, hide it, censor the fuck out of it left and right. And because people were saying, oh, this movie's super violent, this movie's super gory and super fucked up and disturbing, that word of mouth spread, and it got people really curious to check it out. And that's one of the reasons why The Evil Dead is such a big cult classic. But exploitation movies throughout the 70s, they were usually pretty low budget, like maybe less than $1 million. They were super cheap. They were super violent. They were super gory, and they were super offensive and super sexually explicit. One of the most famous examples is a movie called I Drink Your Blood, about humans infected with rabies going around killing people. It's very violent. It's very trashy, fucked up, gory, and there's tons of TNA in it. It's an exploitation movie. It was that was its intent. That was its purpose, and it succeeded because I Drink Your Blood is considered to be one of the biggest cult classic exploitation movies out there. Another trademark of exploitation movies is that they tended to be in pretty rough shape. Movies at that time were kind of in rough shape because film preservation wasn't taken quite as seriously back then. But also film itself is just so difficult to keep clean. But Planet Terror has an intentionally old look to it. I call it a new old look. It's made on purpose to look grainy and scratchy and faded and kind of rough around the edges, literally. There's lots of film scratches. There's lots of film grain. There's even a section when the the movie stops and it burns away, because that's what would happen if because film projector light bulbs, they were so bright, they were also really hot, and film itself, it's very thin and it's very flammable. So if a film reel got stuck, within a few seconds, the movie would just melt away. And you could see that actually happen on screen. So, and they do that on purpose in this movie. Oh, horror metal is here. So they did that on purpose to make this movie look old and grainy and scratchy, is because Robert wanted to make this movie look like a 70s exploitation movie. And I think they do it pretty damn good. It can be off-putting to some who don't like to watch old, grainy, scratchy movies, but I see what they're doing. I can get over it. I kind of had an issue with it for a while at first watching this movie, but you quickly get over it and you just get sucked into the movie. So if you put up with it, you can easily just watch the movie and ignore the graininess. But I appreciate what they were doing. And like I said, Robert Rodriguez is one of those creative juggernauts, so he's able to make it work and pull it off well. Pro number 7. I really wish Trevor Boy was here to concur with this pro. This movie has a very... Maybe so, like the missing reel, like they skip an entire scene. Horror Metal is down here saying, I like the whole old school exploitation vibe, but they might have taken it a little far with the graininess and the missing reels. There is a scene when the movie stops and it melts away, and then it cuts to a scene that happens a while later. The bone shack is on fire. Sheriff Haig got shot in the throat by Tolo. We don't know what happened in between that scene. But I get that it's an in joke, because that's what they had to do a lot of times when film reels would get damaged. They would just have to skip immediately to the next reel. So sometimes some footage was missing and some scenes were missing. Again, I can deal with it because I see that's what they were doing, but I do want to know what happened. How did Sheriff Haig get shot by Tolo? Why is the Bone Shack on fire? But we never find out. But yeah, the next pro, the fun Texan vibe. This movie is very Texan. Robert Rodriguez himself is a Texan. His studio, Troublemaker Studios, is based in Dallas, Texas, and I do believe this movie actually was shot in Texas. Let's see. It's not showing. Oh, fuck. I don't know. It doesn't say, but I'm pretty sure this movie actually was shot in Texas. With how Texas this movie is, if it well, I mean, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies have been doing that for a while, but still, this movie is so deeply rooted in Texas. So if it wasn't shot in Texas, that'd be a shame. But still, everybody talks with a Southern Texan twang. JT is very barbecue obsessed, so that's a very Texan thing to do. Quick Draw McGraw is a Texas Ranger, so he's good with the revolver. He's always got one on his hip. They use a lot of shotguns. They use a lot of revolvers. They use a lot of blades. They're very pro weapon down in Texas. Maybe I should move down to Texas. Oh, but it's too hot. Ugh. Anyway, so yeah, I just like the Texan vibe of this movie. It's a lot of fun. It gets you swept up in the atmosphere of being a Texan, and it makes you want to visit Texas. Just minus all the rampaging mutant zombies, please. So, oh, funny, I mentioned that. I mentioned that the music was composed by Robert Rodriguez, and inspiration for his score came from John Carpenter, whose music was often played on set. Huh. It does sound kind of John Carpenter-esque at times. So, yeah, maybe that was an influence. Well, not maybe. It was an influence. So, yeah, I can catch up on that. All right, so pro number 8 is oh my god. This movie is violent. Violent and gory as fuck. Another, as I've mentioned, trademark of exploitation movies is that they tended to be extremely graphic and very sexually charged. This movie is no different. There's a lot of TNA in this movie, a lot of scantily clad women running around fighting zombies. There, but most importantly, there's a lot of gore, a lot of blood, guts, and carnage galore in this movie. Arms are torn off, flesh is chewed, heads are torn off. When people are shot, they splatter blood with these nasty, pussy, bloody squibs. I'll just name off some gory highlights. So, all the zombies, by the way, well, I'll talk about this later, but with the effects, but all the zombies are constantly sticky and gooey and gross. Their skin bubbles and it leaks blood and pus out of, to quote Abby, gushing blood and pus through every sacred hole in your body. And a lot of times they have like really big, pussy, bubbly hands and gross looking teeth. But yeah, some gory highlights. So the guy who gets his arm bit off after trying to give Tom Savini his wedding ring back, he gets his arm ripped off, and then then he's thrown onto a car. He gets his other arm torn off, and his fucking skull ripped open, and a zombie pulls out his brain and starts eating it, and he's just slathered in blood and gore. There's a few zombies that just full on get their heads blown the fuck off, and they just explode with blood and pus and viscera. Trying to think. Fuck. Oh, this is gross. There's one scene when Dr. Block is about to collect his wife and leave the hospital when these zombies are starting to run around and cause havoc. He walks in on a patient of his that would have needed to have his arm amputated because he got bit by a zombie, but he finds the room had its sheet drawn and it's splattered with blood all over the place. So he opens it up and finds his patient has turned into a zombie, and he's got the surgical saw in his hand, and he's just cutting apart the doctor that was going to operate on him. So then he sees Dr. Block, then he walks forward. He's about to cut him up with a surgical saw, but excuse me, I just got over a cold, so pardon my cough. This is another minorly funny scene too. He's about to get cut up, but then the thing gets unplugged because he pulls it out of the wall socket, so then it stops. So then the zombie's like, but then, oh, this almost made me gag the first time I watched this. He takes a big pus blood bubble on his face, pops it all over his hands, and smears like a cup of blood and pus all over Dr. Block's face. Oh god, it's so gross, but it's oddly like just kind of funny because like, oh, what the fuck? That's gross. Um, it's gnarly as fuck. Um, so some more gory highlights. The two zombies that JT kills when he finds his perfect barbecue sauce have their heads blown off and they're just oozing blood and flesh all over the place. When Lewis the rapist gets his dick melted off and his eye stabbed out with wood, he goes too long without his DC2 exposure, so he starts to melt and ooze away, and his skin like sags and lolls off of his face. And then he's blown pieces by Cherry Darling's prosthetic leg because it's an assault rifle. It's pretty much like Arnold's gun from the first Predator film. It's an M16 with a grenade launcher attachment underneath the M16's barrel. So she fires off a grenade launcher and just sends him flying. And when Abby gets killed, I think he's killed by an RPG. His skull from his upper jaw up just gets split clean in half, and it falls apart like the end kill at the end of Jigsaw. Though much more, it again, it's visceral and violent, but it's also like sickly funny because you weren't really expecting that to happen, and the effect is also a little funny because it looks a little funny, but it's also violent and visceral. Overall, this movie is gnarly and violent and bloody and gory and fucked the fuck up. This is probably, in my opinion, one of at least the top 10 most violent and gory zombie movies that I've ever seen in my life. And it's fucking great. Excuse me. So, pro number 9 is the, I may as well talk about this. Yeah, the amazing special effects. There is a fair bit of digital stuff that's used in this movie. Planet Terror makes heavy use of digital effects throughout the film, mostly for Cherry's fake leg. During post-production, the effects teams digitally removed McGowan's right leg from the shots and replaced it with computer-generated props, first the table leg and then the assault rifle. During... Excuse me. Again, I just got over a cold, so pardon me. During shooting for these scenes, McGowan wore a special cast which restricted her leg movement to give her the correct motion. But because the movie is made to look grainy and scratchy, it does hide a lot of the digital effects. Not that they look bad, but if you do pay attention, you can tell that there's quite a bit of digital effects throughout the film. But there's also a lot of practical effects in this movie, and they look great. I do think that the effects were done by K&B. they look like KNB style special effects. Because the blood and gore in this movie, it looks very similar to the effects that were used in Quentin Tarantino's Django Unchained. And again, here it looks very similar, so I'm pretty sure the effects were done by KNB because they also did Django Unchained. Like I said, there's a lot of blood and guts and gore in this movie, and it's all very visceral and violent, and it's all pretty well done. The gunshot squibs, they splatter blood all over the place when people are shot. There's lots of really good zombie prosthetics and makeup. They always have this constant slimy and sticky look. It's a bit reminiscent, like how the zombies look in this movie. They look a bit reminiscent of the Incredible Melting Man. And I do think that was the intent. A lot of zombies, they have these giant growths and giant pus bubbles all over their face, and they're super deformed and mutated and slimy and gross. Some of them limp about, like they have these giant humps on their arms and back to make them look even more mutated. Some of them just have bloody, pussy, bubbly skin, but they're always deformed in some way, and all the effects look really, really, really good. I don't really see any flaws. When Quentin Tarantino is melting away into his Incredible Melting Man form, it's pretty obviously digitally enhanced, but it still looks good. It looks gross and slimy and disgusting. The effects overall in this movie are are overall, yeah, pretty solid. Lots of blood and guts, lots of gore, lots of good carnage candy. So any zombie fan will be very happy with how much gore is in this movie. Excuse me. Oh, and of course, there's lots of explosions in this movie too, and those all look really good. And speaking of which, the last pro number 10 that I have is the action scenes in this movie are overall pretty awesome. It's very high octane. It's very fast paced. It's very well edited. It's very well shot. Very well choreographed. Lots of gunplay. Lots of blade play, or sword play, I think the term's called. Lots of explosions. Lots of really good kick-ass action in this movie, and it's a lot of fun to watch. So again, if you're an action fan too, this movie, again, they'll just kind of wet everybody's whistle. If you want to watch a zombie movie, got you covered. If you want to watch an action movie, got you covered. If you want to watch a Robert Rodriguez movie, this movie has you covered. This is a kick-ass flick. So finally, with all these really good things to say about Planet Terror, do I have any cons? Sadly, yes. Only two, with one serious nitpick. Nitpick number one is I don't really much care for the rogue military squad stuff. As I've stated many times, I don't really like zombie movies that introduce a human threat. I have no interest in human versus human action. It just completely disinterests me. The main threat should be zombies. And because these are mutant zombies, you could kind of do like a Resident Evil or Left 4 Dead type thing where you could have different variants of zombies to keep stuff interesting all throughout the film. But they don't do that. They just introduce the rogue military squadron. They do end up turning into zombies, so that is a decent compensation. But still, it does establish a human threat, and I just don't care. It's not my interest in zombie media. And it kind of leads into actually, so no, I have two nitpicks. This leads into another nitpick, is that once all the survivors are rounded up by this military squadron and they're brought to the old army base in their town, that's when the movie starts to go a little bit downhill for me, because we're no longer just watching survivors fight off zombies. Now we're watching survivors fight off a rogue military squadron. I don't give a shit about that. I just want to see people go around in a Texas town doing batshit crazy things to a batshit crazy group of zombies. That's what I want to see. But this also kind of has to, it is when they get to the military base, the movie goes downhill for me. But it really loses me with con number one. This movie kind of has a non-ending. As soon as, I may as well talk about this too. The biggest problem that I have with this movie, con number two, I really don't like that Ray dies. He spends the whole movie being such a total badass, kicking zombie ass left and right, kicking soldier ass left and right, being a total badass and a very likable character all throughout the film, only to just have him be killed off by one random zombie. It's so lame. But it has to do as well with the non-ending. After Ray dies, all the rest of the characters are in a helicopter and they pick Cherry up and they head off to their destination. Then the last 2 minutes of the movie is Cherry narrating the film, saying how she goes around collecting survivors and bringing them to their sanctuary and gunning down zombies with her minigun leg left and right. And then the last shot of the movie is her saying 2 against the world with her daughter, 2 against the world. End movie. It just feels really abrupt and very unsatisfying. Like, no, I don't think. This movie had a $23 million budget, so that's quite a bit of money to play with. But they just, like, kind of run out of ideas on how to end this movie. It feels like such a non-ending. And now every time I watch this, I'm just like, you could have done more. But yeah. That's really my biggest problem, is that once Ray dies, I just kind of check out of this movie. I'm just like, I'm not really interested in anything else that happens. That just kind of leaves a bit of a bad taste in my mouth, which sucks, much as I love this movie. And I guess surprisingly, I didn't have as much to say about it as I thought I would have. But that's also the kind of thing that this movie is. It knows it's batshit crazy. It knows it's a wild-ass zombie flick. It knows what it's trying to do, and it does it very well. It's an entertaining ride through and through, and any zombie fan will be very, very entertained and very pleasantly surprised when they give this movie a watch. I highly recommend Planet Terror. Like I said, this is probably my favorite Robert Rodriguez film. Alita Battle Angel is also really good, but I think I will always go back to Planet Terror. To me, this is quintessential Robert Rodriguez. Sadly, I will not be giving this movie a perfect solid 10 out of 10, but still, I highly, highly recommend this movie. It's a kick-ass zombie flick. So I will be giving this, a solid 9. A perfect, or not perfect, but a very solid 9 out of 10. Check it out. I highly recommend it. I would also consider this a Nick's special. So yeah. Post your comments down below. Let me know what you think. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and share this video with your friends. Look forward to the last episode of Zombiesploitation for a little while. I don't know what it's going to be, so I'll just surprise you all. Post your comments down below. Let me know what you think. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and share this video with your friends. And as always, go out, and if you're in Texas and you see this giant cloud of green gas billowing into the air, you best grab yourself a boomstick and some barbecue, and you best run. And I will see you guys in the next video. And don't forget that perfect barbecue sauce.